Hey, welcome to Cord Cutting This Week, number 19, the show where I give you my opinion on some of the biggest cord cutting stories from the past week and the ones I think will be most influential going forward. Now, these are just a fraction of the stories we cover over at cordcardsnews.com. I will link to them all in the show notes down below, but make sure to follow us at cordcardsnews.com for more daily news, tips, tricks, how-to guides, all about the world of cord cutting. To make it easier, we now have an app for iOS, Android, and Amazon Fire tablets. I'll put a link to that down in the show notes also. But let's dive in. There's a ton of big stories from the past week. Number one being that USTVNOW has been yanked from the Roku devices by Roku at, quote, the request of Roku or content owners. Now, USTVNOW, is it legal, is not legal, has been debated a long time. They advertise themselves as a service primarily for military and U.S. citizens living overseas, but they've never done anything, at least in recent years, to prevent you from being able to stream it within the United States or sign up if you live within the United States. As far as the military part, my family's been in the military for about 15 years, and we have never heard of this service from any military staff. So, is it legal? I don't know. I don't think this really solves that question. What we do know is Roku received a request from content owners. What content owners people have asked? Probably some of the channels who they streamed. Does that mean they were upset that it was still able to stream within the United States? Maybe. That could be. We'll have to wait and see there. But what's interesting here is this seems to be part of a continued crackdown by Roku in an effort to get back into the Mexican market. Last week, Roku once again lost an appeal to start selling their devices in the greater Roku or Mexican markets. Cablevision brought a lawsuit against a third-party Roku channel. Roku got dragged in when a Mexican court ruled that Rokus were basically allowing piracy and banned the sale of them in Mexico. Walmart, Best Buy, Office Depot, Radio Shack, and more have all been fighting on Roku's behalf to get the devices back into the Mexican market, but once again they lost. According to a Cablevision spokesperson, it is necessary for Roku to make adjustments to its software as other online content distributor platforms do, so violations of copyright content do not take place. Basically, I think that Cablevision and the Mexican courts are upset that Roku allows people to create unlisted, private, they used to be called, Roku channels. These are Roku channels not in the channel store, but that if you know a code, you can sideload them. Basically, they're holding Roku liable for that content. Whether you agree with that or not is another argument. But the reality is, you know, this is costing Roku real money. So why is Roku yanking USTVNOW instead of standing up for it? Well, the reality is Roku makes nothing off piracy apps. The percentage of people who use a Roku device for piracy is so small, and that versus the sales they could get from being in the available in the Mexican market, there's just no comparison. It's much more in Roku's interest to say piracy goodbye, we don't want piracy, in exchange for the ability to sell in countries like Mexico, versus saying, oh well, we're going to allow piracy and we're going to give up an entire country worth of sales. The reality is Roku as a business is looking at it like, hey, there's just this fraction of a percentage of people using these piracy services. There's been a whole bunch of them taken down, not just USTVNOW. Is that legal or not? We don't know. But that's why it's happening. I firmly believe this is a response to the lawsuit from the Mexican government, or the lawsuit and the blocked by the Mexican government. Now, Roku's not technically being sued. It's the manufacturers of these third-party add-ons or channels or whatever you want to call them that are being sued. But Roku's been dragged into the litigation because they were collateral damage, almost, if you call it. So we'll have to wait and watch on this. But if countries start blocking devices like the Amazon Fire TV maybe in the future, Amazon doesn't sell in Mexico, but if they did, that could be an issue, like Roku, etc. Look for crackdowns on piracy to come from the content, the device manufacturers. If the Amazon Fire TV suddenly is getting blocked in countries, you better believe Amazon's going to crack down on all those, quote, jailbroken, I know they're not really jailbroken, but that's what people call them, Fire Sticks out there. So keep an eye out on that. Amazon's already cracked down on some of those on their own site, and other players that are, quote, fully loaded Kodi boxes, unquote. So keep an eye on the story. I think we're just seeing the start of pressure being put on device manufacturers to be liable for what content's going out there. And there is a difference here. A lot of people say, well, they're selling Windows, they're selling Apple computers. There's a difference between a device that's possible to do it and a device that's advertised to do it. In Mexico, they are kind of saying, hey, if it's possible to do it, we want you to be held liable for it. On the flip side, in the United States, it's been more of a, this device is specifically being marketed as a piracy device. So where that line gets blurred is going to be very interesting, something to keep an eye on, and we're going to have to watch for it going forward. Next up is another very interesting story. NBA is testing 99-cent fourth quarter streaming. So the idea here is the NBA has been alerting some NBA League Pass people who have it on their phone or tablet. The pop-up comes up and says, hey, there's a close game happening here. For 99 cents, you can watch the fourth quarter. I think this is great. How many times have you looked at your phone and been like, wow, there's a huge upset in the mix, or that game is crazy close. We never expected that game to be so close. And for 99 cents, I probably would pay for that game. I would never thought of paying for the entire game, but once I saw that, hey, there's a massive upset in the works, I may very possibly be interested in paying for that 99-cent rental. Now, this clearly seems to be in beta. There's not a lot to talk about. NBA has not commented on it. You seem to need to have the NBA League Pass installed and logged in to access it. So I do have a link to it in the show notes here where you can go see what that notification looks like. But I think this is awesome. It's one more step closer to a la carte games, which I think is the future. Maybe I want to buy an entire team, but quite often, you hear, oh, number one, number two is playing each other in college football. I want to watch that game. Or even though I'm not a big fan of either team, hey, it's number one, number two, this is going to be a good game, right? Or you suddenly see some unknown team, some Division 3 or 2 taking on Alabama or something, and there's a massive upset possibility out there. And we've seen all those in the past too. And how many times would you love to just jump in there and see the fourth quarter to see what's happening with it? So keep an eye on this. If this is successful, I fully expect it to be successful, that NBA will continue to do more of this, and other sports streaming services will probably jump on board. But it's great to see the NBA becoming more cord-cutting friendly, more streaming friendly, with their desire to offer free streaming services, or the access for 99 cents, to fourth quarter out there. Hopefully, eventually, they'll allow us the ability to get access to full games a la carte style. All right, next up, AT&T is rolling out new cell phone towers for their 5G internet. So AT&T has announced that they're going to be one of the first. They say the first. Other services have said they'll be the first to have 5G home internet rolling out in the United States. But AT&T did announce that they're rolling out new, quote, white box cell phone towers. These new cell phone towers are leaving behind the proprietary software and hardware that AT&T's used in the past that requires them to go there and physically make changes to the device. These new cell phone towers will be software updatable. So AT&T in the future, if a new standard comes out, a new tweak, they'll be able to send a message out to these white box cell phone towers, make a software change to change maybe the bandwidth it's using, make some changes to the way it transmits, and very quickly roll out 5G or maybe 6G someday. So AT&T is going to be rolling this out nationwide. There was a number, I'm blanking out on it. I want to say it's like 60,000 of these cell phone towers are going to be installed. They're going to start these rollouts very soon. They consider this to be a first step in the roll of 5G nationwide. Some of the current cell phone towers will need to be altered, especially the older ones. Some of the newer ones may be ready with minor updates, but AT&T believes these new white boxes will make it easier going forward to not have to physically go to each cell phone tower, but to just send out a software patch. Keep an eye on this. This is really cool. Abandoning the proprietary standards, going to a open standard that is easily updatable. AT&T is definitely making moves to become one of the most forward-thinking, at least on the back end, cell phone providers. Next up is Google wants to help you become a cord cutter, or at least find the streaming services or shows on streaming services out there. Google is rolling out an update to the Google Play TV and Movie app, with this update, not only if you type in, let's say, Game of Thrones, not only would it say, hey, we have these seasons available for sale, if Game of Thrones, for instance, if a new episode is on HBO Now, you'll be able to see, hey, oh wow, HBO Now has the episode I want, click a button, and it will instantly launch from the Google Play app into the HBO app, open the episode you want to watch. It works with Hulu, Amazon Prime, and all kinds of other services and apps if you have authentication for like the Watch ABC app, etc. It'll work with a ton of them. I have a full list of all the ones they work with in the show notes. But it will allow you to go out there and very Apple TV-esque, especially with the fact that both of them don't have Netflix support. Netflix has not worked with Apple and they're not working with Google on this. But I think this is the future. There was a lot of studies came out last week that show that people aren't buying downloadable music. They're subscribing to Spotify, Pandora, Apple Music, Amazon Music to access their music catalog. And it makes great sense because why pay all this money to subscribe or to buy all these songs when I could pay $10 a month and get all the music I want when I want it. It's so big, so popular right now that CDs and physical media, vinyl even, are outselling digital downloads. And the reason for that is because people who would have got digital downloads are now getting Spotify, Apple Music, etc. It raises the question, is the same thing going to happen with TV? Are we looking at a point where someday down the road where a Spotify of TV, a Spotify of movies launches and people stop buying rentals because I have a Netflix-like service but pretty much has everything I want? The question is pricing on that. It won't be cheap right now. You are going to be paying a pretty penny. But it makes you wonder, would people pay $50, $60 for a service that if it said, hey, when that DVD comes out in stores, you'll have access to it here if you pay $50 a month. If the next day after a TV show airs, you'll have access to it here for $60 a month. Will people do that? With music they have, if you think about it, $10 for music seems like a lot compared to what a lot of people would pay maybe one CD or a 99-cent song here or there. But people have done it in droves. So would people do that for music? Keep an eye on this. It seems like Apple and Google are trying to get ahead of that trend and saying not only will we sell you the movie, but we'll show you where to find it. And they will, of course, collect the data and learn what you want. And through Google Play and Apple TV, they'll start recommending movies and shows. They'll say, hey, we saw you watch Silicon Valley. You may also like these other Mike Judge shows, King of the Hill and so forth. So keep an eye on this. The world is changing. Apple, Google, and others are trying to get ahead of it. The question is, what will it exactly look like when it's done changing? So keep an eye on that. And lastly, the big story of the day, launched today when I'm recording this, is DirecTV Now's DVR will have a 30-day limit on recordings, according to a new screenshot. So DirecTV Now has been rolling out banners welcoming people to the new DirecTV Now and different streaming players. On the website for beta.directvnow.com, they launched one, and there's an interesting footer. It says, functions limited in beta, data consumption and compatible devices required, not available on select channels, 20-hour recording time. We've known that for a while, that the free version will have 20 hours. Stored for a max of 30 days. US only restrictions apply. That is new. And 30 days, from the way it's worded, makes it sound like if you record a show, you have 30 days to watch it before it auto-deletes. So not only will we have a 20-hour, you will also have a 30-day limit. We do know that there will be the ability to buy extra storage, where the extra storage maybe allow you to keep it indefinitely. We don't know. AT&T has not said. But keep a close eye on this. It's an interesting hybrid there. If you want to see the screenshot with all the details, look at it down below. That raises a lot of questions about the success. What will people think about it? And it's been almost 50-50 looking at the readers. We've had about 61 different readers post a comment on it on our site. Half of them are like, oh, that's okay. I mostly DVR shows to watch it the next day. Another half are like, hey, I DVR a show and I want to keep it. I want to go back 6 months later and still watch that show. So it's an interesting mix between people. What are you? Would that bother you? Would a 30-day limit to watch a show after you record it be an issue? Or are you somebody who says, hey, I don't care. I DVR a show because I want to watch it that week or maybe the week after. I'm not thinking about watching it a month or two down the road. Leave us a comment. Let us know. I'd love to hear from you. Well, there you go. The top stories I think will be most impactful going forward in the world of cord cutting. Love to know what you think about these stories. Leave us a comment, hit subscribe, hit that thumbs up, share this with your friends. It's hugely helpful. We would greatly appreciate it. So check back next Friday. Every Friday, for the most part, I post a weekly update about what I think are the most important stories from the past week. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.